Okay, you're live.
All right, thank you, Chief of Staff. I want to welcome everyone to tonight's Discipline Matrix Ad Hoc Committee meeting. We are rallying up the troops after several weeks off. We've had some vacation dates, some end of the summer time off, and so we're regrouping now. We're going to be looking at AC Hubbard to go ahead and lead us and pick us up where we left off. And I think what's going to be good for the public and for our group here is to do just a brief recap on where we left off and what we're going to be picking up at this point as well too. And I do want to make also a note that we had internal monitoring team site visit today. We've had a recent case management conference with the federal judge. And in all these spaces, there seems to be a lot of overlap in the work we're doing here. And I want to just continue. I know we've had a long, grueling group of getting together. There's been a lot of work, a lot of lift that we've been doing here, and a lot of productive conversations. And I just wanted to assure the panel here and any public that may tune in that much of the work that we're doing here is going to be having intersections of bleeding over into many of the other areas of oversight and just the NSA and how we move forward with certain things around discipline and getting on the same page around discipline and hopefully moving the department in the right way and working in partnership in terms of having a common vision of what the standards and expectations are for OPD and how we hold the line for those standards and also be able to work with the department that when mistakes are made or where there is discipline that needs to take place, how we go about doing so and really, landing in a place that works for the department, but also works for us as holding that standard of what we expect from the department. So I do want to thank everybody here that for all the work that you all have been doing. It's definitely helping kind of pave a path for much needed kind of a new way of doing things within Oakland. And I'm kind of just proud of the group and how we can inform some of that work in doing so. So I'll leave it at that and welcome everyone. I don't know if anybody wants to, it's been a couple of weeks, so I want to open up the floor if there's any statements, any welcoming that folks want to check in and say hello. Otherwise, I will pass it to Macy Hubbard and you can kick us off and get us going to where we're at.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Hello, everyone. I know it's been a few weeks, but I do want to echo what the chair said about today's site visit. And one of the main topics of discussion was discipline, specifically about the consistency of discipline and uncovering any disparity. And I think that's very important to the work we're doing here. And basically, it's are we applying discipline equally? It wasn't a conversation of lessening our discipline or sustaining less, or even the amount of discipline that the chief gives is making sure that if you're going to do it for this member, ensure that you're also applying it equally to the next member. And that is a very comprehensive conversation we're having now subsequent to an audit that our Office of Internal Accountability did. So I couldn't help myself thinking about our time together this evening and what we're talking about because it's very relevant to that. Just as a recap, we did finish the manual of rules. Chair, I think next time we meet with the chief, I think we need to nudge him a little to take a look at that because I haven't received a response. So I can only send so many emails and put him on the top of the list. But him looking at the manual of rules and the work that we've done, I think, is very important. And so the phase two now is where we're at now, and we are now looking at the discipline matrix. And when we met last time, we got through the first three that you see here in blue: performance of duty, intentional search, seizure, arrest, planning of evidence, and also identification of undercover officer. The reason why I picked these out, these 12, is because if you look at the discipline matrix, these are the ones where in the first offense, the only option you have is termination. So reports and bookings, for example, which is the next one. Oh, somehow my screen paused here. Sorry about that. Give me 1 second here. Can you all see my screen or no? No,
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
okay. The first offense is termination. So we want to, those are the easiest ones probably to get out of the way because there's probably not going to be too much movement on our end regarding that. So for example, if you can see that, so 370.45, this is a class one offense, and the only choice that the chief has, if this is a sustained case, is termination. Okay, so we agreed not to change any of the first three that you see on this list. I don't know why. Did Zoom change their? I'm gonna have to keep doing this. It keeps pausing my screen share if I move. So I want to start off with reports and bookings, and I want to go into the definition first, just so you know what we're looking at here. So it says no member or employee shall knowingly submit false, inaccurate, improper departmental records with the intent to assist prosecution or defense, falsify time records or financial records for fraudulent purposes, falsify official reports or records, or falsify or alter evidence. So as that reads, if a member is sustained for this, the only choice that the chief has is termination. How do you all feel about that?
So this is an intent. This is intent crime and offense rather. And
Yeah.
so how do we give me an example of intent? How do you find intentionality in falsifying official records or reports?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, some of it can be circumstantial, but the one that we could see is, an officer's interviewing someone and it's all captured on body worn camera, and then their police report says something completely different.
Okay.
You Mirandize a suspect, they waive their rights and they give you a statement and they say something to the effect of like, oh, I did not commit this offense, but the officer says the suspect admitted to me that he committed this offense. That would be a reports and bookings charge.
Okay, so for instance, in a case that I help me if I'm recalling it inappropriately or inaccurately rather, we had a report by a sergeant investigating a matter, and then it went on to a higher level of review, and that level changed the report in some significant ways. And it caused it to be more of a mitigated circumstance rather than an intentional.
Yeah,
Who gets in trouble there? Are we holding that second level? I think it was a lieutenant who changed the sergeant's report, and it lent for a different result rather than termination on the first offense. And we've had higher up levels, and I won't disclose whom, but didn't want to find it to be a terminable offense because it would derail an officer's ability to move up in the ranks, obviously, if he's terminated. So this applies on all levels of falsification of reports and bookings. Right?
It can, and I think we satisfied the knowingly part because they actually did something explicit there. I think the argument would be whether there was some nefarious intent there. So if you like, let's say you help me wordsmith something to make it sound, better in a report, like grammar, it says like, okay, well, I am altering it, but did I change the meaning behind it? And I think that's key. It's like it depends on what are you spewing falsehood by whatever you wrote in there, and is it your intent to change the reader's mind on whatever it may be? So it definitely could fall into this category. Yes,
I can master something. Can you hear me?
we can.
Yes.
Okay. here's an example of where this is the crux of the public having trust in the Oakland Police Department.
Yes.
This is the 50-yard line of the problem that has been alleged about Oakland Police Department. Right here. This is it. And what muddies up the water is the word intent.
Right.
It shouldn't even be there. Look, if you are falsifying a police report, that's enough. Whether you intended to do it or not, you're not telling the truth. And if you are falsifying something, but you didn't intend to do it, I don't understand that in a police report when we're supposed to be reporting the facts. Now, if somebody told you some information in your investigation and what they told you was a lie, that's not falsifying the report. What you did was report what was told to you. So I don't even know why intent is even in this definition. It only makes it difficult to hold people accountable. There should be absolutely no lying on police reports. Absolutely none. And you mean I could lose my job if I lie? Yes. We want the facts and nothing but the facts.
But on the flip side, the defense is going to say, but I didn't do it intentionally.
Yeah. I don't care if you did it intentionally or not.
So how do we write that?
You take intent out.
Yeah.
I've seen policies like this are throughout all law enforcement. In either you are either a department, the character of the department is either they fudge on police report and on certain circumstances as it affects certain people, certain classes of people, or they are a police department that says our integrity means everything to us and we report the absolute truth as we know it.
But how do we overcome the defense of I didn't intentionally did it?
I don't see how you have to overcome it. It doesn't matter. If you intended to do it or not, the question is, did you falsify it on the police report? Well, I didn't mean to do it. Well, I didn't mean to shoot the guy. I didn't mean to kill the guy. I just meant to hurt him. I didn't mean him to die.
Well, that's how you get from, something down to manslaughter from, something higher.
Yeah, but we're not. Yeah, but this is more tort and has to do with if you keep your job or not. If you're going to lie on a police report, you shouldn't be working in law enforcement.
Oh, I have no defense of this behavior. I'm just trying to close any loophole where
I think
defense is I didn't mean to.
That was unacceptable in my career. We cared less about if you meant it or did not mean. Did you knowingly lie on this report?
Well, then you should have that word in there, and they do. No member or employee shall knowingly, and then take out, like you said, the word intent, because knowing actually subsumed in knowingly is intentionality.
But in this word intent, it just leaves a crack for people can argue about keeping their position and keeping their job. Look, if you lie on one police report, that's grounds for termination.
Okay, so then knowingly is again going to raise the issue of intentionality. So maybe you don't need to have
strike knowingly.
Either strike it knowingly or strike intent to assist.
I say strike both of them. I shouldn't have said knowingly. What I was trying to communicate is that the person falsified a police report. If you wrote it down, then the assumption is that you knew what you were writing. We are the gatherer of facts. You don't write lies in police report or if someone is lying to you or you suspect that they're lying to you, you write the report and you attribute that to them, not you. That was their statement. That's what they told me. But when you falsify a police department, when you come into conclusions and you're adding things that are not there, and I arrived at the house at 12 o'clock when in fact you didn't arrive at 12 o'clock, you got there at 11 o'clock, you know?
Well, again, even if you take out knowingly or intent, just know that the defense will be, I didn't intend to do it. And that opens up the door to whatever panel or group or officer will look at it and say, well, I believe that they didn't intentionally do it, therefore.
Well, when the Oakland Police Department gets to a point where they mature enough to say, we're not tolerating any falsification on any documents.
So this is zero tolerance.
Zero tolerance. When they when they mature to that level, then we got an opportunity for their integrity to grow and trust to grow with the public. But if we keep giving officers, you know, avenues to mitigate not telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth on a police report, you know, it's a crime to falsify on a police report.
I agree.
It's a crime. So I don't see how it's mitigated by intent or not. Either you did it or you didn't do it.
Well, the panel or whomever hears this in internal affairs will hear the defense of, I did not knowingly or intentionally do it. And I guess that's where we are putting.
Well, but I guess that's litigating the case. But if the document says intent is inconsequential, if you falsify a report, that's absolutely grounds for termination.
And I understand, and you claw your way back into the department by going to arbitration and making these arguments that I did not intend. And then the arbitrator will decide with the evidence you submitted that, oh yeah, they didn't really intend.
So why am I helping that person? By
you aren't going to help that person.
Well, don't put intent. Then I wouldn't put intent.
Yeah, that's their defense. Let them come.
That's their job to defend their client or whatever. But I'm not going to help them out by having intent in 370.45.
Okay, well then just know that's what's happening.
Yeah,
whether you put it in here or not, this is how this one's gonna work out. At an arbitration.
I don't think that's not my concern.
I know.
But my concern, I don't care about arbitration. I don't care about them clawing their way back into the police department. I'm trying to figure out, how do we write policy where we can raise the credibility of the police department? This is one of those elements.
All right, I defer.
Agree. And I think, in hearing this conversation, I keep on going back to some of these, because I try to put myself in the shoes of being at a discipline committee hearing, right? And then having to rule on one way or the other, whether it was intent, was or not intent, right? And I always lean, and I appreciate this conversation because I lean towards the zero tolerance, right? The more of a slippery slope we create or allow, then that's going to just keep that door just slightly open, right, for interpretation. And I'm thinking, this is one of those cases where it's like at face value, it's zero tolerance, right? And then in the disciplinary process, we could decide by looking at the facts, looking at body cam, looking at, the circumstances, how nefarious it was and whether there was actual intent there or not. And again, that's where those class 2 considerations come in for me, because I want to be able to hold a line and say, no, it's zero tolerance. We're looking at this and that we're not giving any way out. And then if it truly was some type of just like, I I tripped and fell and, and accidentally signed my name on something, right? Like
Oh,
we
I
could be
lost
able
a
to look
piece
at
of
things in the
paper.
back. We could look at
I
things in the back
cannot
end
think of
and actually say, oh, wow, as hard to believe that was, we're looking at body cam and he actually did trip and fall. And actually, you know, I'm thinking of a ridiculous
yeah,
example right now.
I
But
know, but the fact that you are grasping for something to explain this makes my and I think our position that it has to be zero tolerance. Either you are reporting the facts or you're not, and we're not going to say we want to report half truths. And look, you can get away lying 3 times, but on your 4th time, we're gonna lower the boom on you. No, look, when you come out of the academy, when you enter the academy, you have to tell the truth. You take an oath, and you are an oath keeper, and you are to be a truth teller, and there are to be not any acceptable justifications for little white lies.
And I suspect that's why it's termination on the first offense.
Exactly.
So zero tolerance. Okay.
So let's take intent out of there.
And knowingly.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I don't think knowingly was ever in there. That was my word.
No, it's in there.
Oh, it's up there.
It's in there?
Yeah. It's in the header here.
Oh.
The one thing that I will say, and we surprisingly get a lot of these complaints, and I'll give you a much more soft version of this. We have a victim of a crime who reported that they've been robbed. So they tell the officer that they are robbed of, let's say, $20. And the officer mishears that and writes in the report $15, let's say. So then the allegation against the officer is that they're lying in their police report. Now, there's no gain for the officer to make such a lie. It didn't result in any prosecution or anything. It's just misheard during this interview what the person said.
So, Brian, do you think that if somebody mishears something and writes it down, that's falsifying? I don't think that's falsifying.
I don't think so either. But again, this is what we're looking into. And it's like one can say that if we're removing knowingly intent, blah, 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 one can easily argue, well, it is falsification. They said this and you wrote this. So
I heard him say that it was $15. And that's what I wrote down. I did not falsify the report. And that's what I heard him say. Now, that person would have to, it's my word against theirs. That person would have to have more evidence, circumstantial evidence to prove that it was actually $20 as opposed to 15. And in fact, I'm gonna be honest with you. Well, I'm always honest with you. I'm gonna side with the officer, 100%. That's why you got to take knowingly and intent intent out of there, because look, you're the sworn officer. I'm siding with you. Somebody accuses you of stealing $5. You say, I didn't steal the $5. I'm not going to believe the citizen. We'll take the report, but I'm not believing them. I don't think a person would risk their whole job over $5.
Oh, Reggie, there are some things that people risk their jobs for that you would just scratch your head.
Well, if it does happen, I know that's the exception and not the rule.
Yeah.
So it rarely happens.
And that goes back to my point. Like, is there a way to remove the intentional, the intent, right? Knowingly, like that language, make it zero tolerance, and also including a class 2 consideration for that? Because then it's like, at that point, there's no ambiguity of what's the expectation is very clear. It's zero tolerance. And then if somebody that's in that situation were to file a complaint and say, no, it was $15, it wasn't $20, right? Or it was $20, it wasn't $15. He stole my $5, right? And then it gets to our level and we're going back and you're reviewing things and it turns out, oh, you know what? It was a clerical mistake over $5. And you need to do better. That $5, it caused all this trouble and all this manpower to us get down to the bottom of it. So yes, we determined that it was a class 2 violation and that you messed up and that you need to do better, but we're not going to hold you to the standard of a class 1 violation, which in that case would be a termination.
Right.
again, this is how OPD got into the slippery slope. This right here.
Yeah.
This right here. There's a large segment of this community that doesn't think Oakland police officers do tell the truth, and they write books about it.
Yeah.
So this is the hill I'm gonna die on.
Yeah.
Take knowingly and false and intent out of it, and say, look, you got to tell the truth all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the danger of creating a class 2, is that one can then mitigate it down when it shouldn't have been. So what you do have the authority to do, though, is say, this is not a reports and bookings issue. This is a performance of duty general issue, and you can kick it over there. It's like, well, they can just get sustained for not being a good listener, and you can use that section. Nothing says that you have to be handcuffed to just one section only. You can find the more applicable section and find a sustained finding there, and that is a class.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. And actually that actually answers my question, because I am trying to find that happy medium of like saying, no, absolutely, we're not leaving any door open or any crack open for any ambiguity, any slippery slope. It's zero tolerance. But if we find in our review of the process of the allegations that, oh, you just didn't listen well, or you just wrote the wrong note, or, you know, wasn't nefarious, it wasn't intentful, right? Going back to us knowing that with removing the language, then we can say, well, you know, it's actually more appropriate for us to sustain this level of responsibility versus kind of what you've been alleged to have conducted.
Is that a charging issue? Like, who decides whether or not it will be a class 1 or not? Yeah,
that's a great question. So, and when we intake a complaint in internal affairs, we have an intake unit. It's run by a lieutenant. And what we do is we accept the allegation as is. So if a person says the officer lied in their police report, we will add the charge of reports and bookings. And what that does is it gives us a very broad scope of that investigation that allows us to ask those questions. And what happens is it just starts narrowing from there based on the fact that we receive. And at the end of the day, it could start as big as truthfulness, but then we get down to it. It's like, actually, this was a misunderstanding. The officer didn't lie. And then we can get down to, you know, just even counseling and training at that point. But we, on the front end, we identify all the manual of rules sections that are applicable, as opposed to the other way around, because it makes it much more difficult for us to do a thorough investigation if we start too narrow.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we agree, though, that I will make those changes, but we agree that it minimally should be a termination. There's no, you know, I'll take that as a yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I guess, you know, because I'm not a lawyer and I don't know what like the repercussions are down the line. Like, what I am trying to be sensitive and transparent about is I want to be able to hold that line and saying there's zero tolerance for that. But if we find out that it was just a typo, that we're also not going to skew you over that either, right? And that's part of the balance I am trying to strike right now with our officers, with everything that civilian oversight is getting accused of doing. I don't want to fall into that narrative. I started going to lineups and telling officers to their face, these are the expectations. This is what we're going to hold the line on. And I'm going to tell you that ahead of time so that there's no surprises. And guess what? I'm also not the boogeyman, and I'm not going to go after you if I see a typo, if I see just like a basic mistake that any human can make. You know, I understand what, you know, managing, you know, staff in large organizations are, and there's got to be a time to bring the hammer, and there's also got to be a time to be empathetic and compassionate and to be able to figure out like, well, hey, that was just a human mistake. Let me not, you know, let me not bring it down on just something like that, but also being sensitive to the fact that policing has a very long history of exploiting those loopholes and pulling out that small violin and saying, oh, well, you know, woe us, right? And so we're trying to strike that balance of being fair but also being very accountable as well too.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's fair. And you going to lineups and saying that is very, very impactful. So thank you for doing that. And it goes way more than what I can say in an email or just say, hey, everyone, you know, like they listening to you, I think is very important for the officers. All right. 37072 is compromising criminal cases. This is also a termination offense, first offense. And it says members and yeah, Zoom definitely changed their way of doing things here. Members and employees shall not interrupt, attempt to interrupt, or improperly influence the legal process, engage in any activity with the intent to interfere with the criminal investigation, charging, or prosecution of any case, or fail, refuse to cooperate with an official criminal investigation upon direction of a competent department authority. I can't think of an actual recent scenario of this where someone got terminated.
Now, at what stage does this kick in? Is this engaging within any activity with intent to interfere? Because again, I go back to one case that just will always stay with me at the levels at which it was being investigated, and at, say, the next higher level, the reviewing officer, I think it was like at a lieutenant level, might have been even at a captain level, changed the report.
Yeah. Yeah. That had to do with an internal affairs investigation, and we have a different section for that. We actually have two. One is obstruction and one for interference. That would be more on the
Okay.
interference side, and that's actually another one we'll talk about soon because that's an automatic termination. This
Okay.
section is specific to criminal cases where you're doing something to disrupt or interfere that investigation, and it can be all stages. So it talks about the investigation, so it's just the initial charging, which is from the DA's office or prosecution. If you do anything to
Ah,
interrupt that process, then that
I
would
see.
be a termination.
So it's at this level, that level, rather.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I can tell you a story I think I remember from like 30 years ago. It wasn't here in Oakland, but it was an employee here in Oakland, but their friend got arrested in a different city in the Bay Area, and they were doing things to assist their friend, which would then interfere with that investigation. You know, seeking evidence or trying to use some type of police authority to assist in that. I mean, that was a long time ago, but that's the only example I can think of where it's like, okay, you're clearly engaging in activity for the purpose of helping your friend to interfere with the investigation, or at that point, charging of the case.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Very good. Assisting criminals, 37081. This is also a termination. Members and employees shall not disclose to any person attempting to commit a criminal act or who may be engaged in criminal activity any information that might assist him or her in committing a crime, evading arrest, or disposing of evidence of any unlawful act. Yeah, I mean, the easy example I can give for this, even though I don't have any like real examples, is, you know, like you receive word that, you know, our investigations is going to put out a warrant for someone, or
Mm-hmm.
and you warn them in advance so then they can flee apprehension.
Yeah.
So that
So,
would definitely fit into this category.
mhm.
Oh, I got a great example of
Yeah.
multiple police departments engaging in child rape and disclosing of information so that they could evade arrests and stings and operations and stuff like that. So it's,
Yeah.
it's pretty straightforward, a pretty important one.
Yeah. Okay, right along. Endorsements and referrals fees exchanged. I know we talked a lot about this one going 370.90. Members and employees shall not suggest, recommend, advise, or otherwise offer counsel concerning the procurement of a particular product or professional service, whether or not a fee is exchanged. We found this to be a confusing section on what this really means. The way I read into this, and I think there's like city instruction on this also, if I remember correctly, I have to look through my notes, but there's definitely the reason behind it is for some type of personal gain. It's not like me saying, "Hey, everyone, I ate at a great restaurant down the street. Why don't you go check it out?" I mean, I'm obviously endorsing something, but I'm not doing it for personal gain or hope that they get it for personal gain. It's just, you know, it's you know it when you see it type situation.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'll give you another example. I mean, we talk about a lot about a lot of technology is becoming more and more prominent in our profession. And let's say I have a friend in Silicon Valley that's wants to introduce a new camera system or something, and here I am working behind the scenes to make that to make that contract happen here in Oakland. I mean, I obviously am overstepping my bounds as an employee here.
Yeah, but I guess if I was talking to a friend on vacation and they told me about a particular vendor that did something extraordinary in training, and I recommend that, is that a violation?
I mean, it could be depending on. I would say no, just based on that alone. I know that I'm dealing with contract services for different IA things, and I know that that's a big deal of me like making sure I disclose any type of recusals or conflicts of interest there. And if I didn't, and I think that's where this would apply is like if I didn't, then they can get me for that because I'm like, why would I hide that unless I'm getting some benefit out of it, you know?
But it says whether or not a fee is exchanged. So this has just is specific to an exchange of gratuity of some sort or consideration. What if it's just totally free of that? Like I was in DC and I was talking to a friend of mine who's on the police force in Maryland, and they were doing this kind of training for that kind of result. Maybe we would want to look into it. Is that a violation? No fee. It was just something that I heard about. I thought it was impactful and progressive. And maybe we ought to check it out.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that.
So
But
what is
how do we offer protections in that scenario though? Because I get totally what Chair Meredith is saying in that regard. I hear what the intent is on this policy, but professional referrals happen all the time, right? And somebody that does good work and you want to make that professional referral, and they still probably have to go through an RFP process and, put it out there for different vendors and get different bids. But part of making that decision should be like, well, I've had past history with this organization. They do good work. Or this organization is gonna grift you and swindle you, and you probably shouldn't contract with them, right? I mean, how do we take those professional considerations into account through a legitimate process without there being bias or benefit on the back end for individuals?
Yeah, because a lot of stuff you get just from word of mouth.
Yeah, I have to read up again on the city policy, but as I understand it, it's like where there's a violation of city policy, which is pretty severe. I mean, it's like using your position for some type of gain. It doesn't necessarily have to be a fee. It can be just something else, or you just helping your friend. But clearly, basically, there's clearly a conflict of interest, and yet you ignored it. So that's how I understood it when I read the city policy. But I'll have to look at it again.
Yeah, is this like a more of a contracting prohibition kind of thing, or I'm not quite understanding what's the intent of this one, because I would think you would want to hear if someone came across something that sounded like it could benefit OPD, and someone says, "Hey, I just was out someone such and such a place and heard about this, that, and the other." I don't. There's no fee exchanged, but this sounds like you can't even make that kind of suggestion. I guess that's why I'm confused at what is the intent of this.
Gratuity, to prevent gratuities, that somebody who's in business, who's got a relative or a friend or who's in law enforcement, is recommending that that they go get services from their friend's establishment, and that makes the playing field unbalanced to the other people who are in business competition.
So
So
whether
so
that's
that makes
or not,
eh,
fee is exchanged part of
yeah.
it.
And that makes sense to me because OPD is having a staff meeting next week, and it's like, oh, well, my cousin has a taco truck. Why don't you,
Exactly.
go ahead and do business with him? And the next thing you know, he's got a monopoly on all staff meetings out of his taco truck, and it's because that's my cousin, and so we're hooking
Yeah.
him up. So I understand that where I where I want to be able to where I feel like this language is a little prohibited, where I'm, and I think this speaks to Chair Merida's point is, I'm thinking about DVP, right? Like we have ceasefire, we have a partnership with OPD and community-based organizations, right? And if there's a community-based organization that's going through an RFP process, let's say, that it doesn't do good work, doesn't follow up, says F you to the city, says F you to the police department, that type of feedback, if OPD has experienced that level of partnership, that should be considered in an RFP or in like saying, hey, well, this organization does good work and is willing to play ball and comes to the table and does good work. This organization is full of shit and just talks shit and doesn't do anything. Right.
But
And
you,
I don't know how that type of input would be received given this rule or restriction on folks.
I think it's talking about two different things. The example that you gave would be the applicant given, these are references, and they can give names and references that speaks to their ability to do the job and their integrity and their honesty and all of that kind of stuff. What they're trying to get at here is just being fair to all of the merchants, where you don't. This is a slippery slope situation. You have one person that's giving away free coffee or giving away apple pie free, or a free meal on Fridays or whatever, what have you. So then all of the police officers are in and out of that person's business. And then that person gets all of the unintended police protection. Well, the other businesses don't get that kind of favoritism. So to be fair, they say no gratuities at all. There's no way you're going to make it absolutely perfect for everybody, but this is how OPD is going at it. And this is why what I'm offering is why they're going at it this way. We had counter where people would walk up and need a bail bondsman. So we had a chart of all the bail bondsmen that you can have access to if you want to come and bail out a relative or a friend or whatever. And if they asked us, we'd have to give them 3 names. We couldn't give them a name. We'd have to give them 3 names, or we have to point at the board and say, you make the decision.
Yeah.
You know, at Spanger's restaurant, they used to give you know, food down there, and the parking lot had all of those auto clouts in the parking lot. And so, well, the cops would go down there to eat under the guise, or we're observing the parking lot to prevent the auto clouts. No, they were going out and getting that scampi and you know, and that free food. But the other restaurants along 4th Street were upset about that and made complaints. So you know, that's gratuity. That's gratuitous.
All that makes sense. I guess, you know, in my world, the one example I'm thinking of where I'm reading this rule right now that it feels like it's a little conflicting is, again, kind of bringing up the ceasefire partnership. You know, I've worked in leading organizations where a captain of a particular beat, of a particular station would call me directly and say, "Hey, your outreach workers are smoking weed on the job, right? Or after the work, they're smoking weed in the neighborhood, right? Because I'm employing and managing violence interrupters, right? And this is back in the day. And when we're looking at a ceasefire strategy where we're coupling law enforcement with community providers, I expect that level of information to be able to reach the Department of Violence Prevention and say, hey, you know what, we need to put a pause in this effort right now immediately, because the provider we're working with is also engaging in illegal activity while we're trying to do X, Y, and Z efforts, right, on the city's dime. And so in essence, they are suggesting, making recommendations of who the provider is and how those contracts should look in that very moment. I've had to meet with the mayor's office and the police department and mitigate some of those concerns and be like, all right, don't pull my contract. We're going to take care of this staff. You know what I mean? But we expected the police department to be able to provide that level of feedback so that we could all be on the same page on that. And technically, if a captain were to provide that level of information and suggest and say, hey, this community provider you're working with is doing illegal activity and we shouldn't be contracting with them, then technically they're violating this rule. And so that's the one thing that where I'm like,
Okay. All right.
Awesome. Well, I'll spend our time away looking at this some more, and we can come back to it. But on its face, would we agree that that is a termination offense for the termination for the first offense?
You mean
yes.
the endorsement and referrals?
That's right.
Now, okay. Now, why does that have to be termination on the first offense?
That's why we're here. I mean,
yeah, okay. I think that's a little too harsh.
Yeah. Well, again, that's I guess the example I'm bringing is
okay.
that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm conflicted with, where the example I gave is way different than somebody saying, hey, I think you should contract with my buddy that's over here that delivers pizzas to the department every week, and there's like direct monetary benefit from that. Or, I mean, in this case, even if there isn't a fee, if somebody else is benefiting from that because of your relationship, I could understand the nefarious or selfish reasons of which this rule would be in place versus the example I just gave of where I'm like, well, I technically would have want an officer to get fired because they're making suggestions over.
I don't see it as a first offense termination, but I could see that the business community put their pressure on the police department. That's how it became a first offense termination, because it's all about business competition in terms of gratuity. Your explanation, your description, Ricardo, I don't know if what you're saying is gratuitous. I think what you're saying is just giving a report, and you should give a report, and the police department should receive any report about anybody doing any nefarious activity that could potentially be against the law, or has a way to make the city of Oakland, it look bad or embarrass them or whatever. I don't see how that's gratuity. At all. Not in the 370.90, right? That's the one we're talking about, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. This is just about getting something for just having the uniform on, and somebody benefiting from that because they're a police officer. I get a 20% discount on getting my tires. I get 15% discount on getting my brakes changed on my car, or and I'm telling people to go to this person's auto body shop to get their car fixed, etc. That's what 370.90 is aiming at.
So we do have a gratuity section that we'll talk about a little later. Accepting gratuities. So that would be a different section. But as I look at the matrix here, there are actually there's a class 1 and class 2 for endorsements and referrals. If there's a fee exchange, the first offense is termination. If it's endorsement and referrals, no fee exchanged, then the range is counseling to suspension 2 for the first offense, written to S3, suspension 3, and suspension 3 to 30 days.
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
So then that would assume the termination is more of a quid pro quo type of scenario. Right. Got it.
But that's not how this is written.
What's that? Sorry, you broke.
I mean, we had to do a lot of talking to figure that out.
Yeah. And I guess that's what I'm struggling with, Chair Emerita, is also exactly. That's what I'm struggling with, because when I read it exactly how it's written, even though that's not necessarily how I'm interpreting it, right? I understand what the intent is. When I read it exactly how it is, I'm like, well, there's examples that would violate this that aren't necessarily violations, right? And so that's what I'm kind of struggling with a little bit.
So could we go back to the language again, please? This does not include anything that has to do with a city contract or anything like that. I mean, I guess you being in professional services, but their intent is you sending people to a lawyer, you sending people to a plumber, or you sending people to buy this product over somebody else's product, or you sending people to this barbershop or this hairstylist or something like that, or you're personally getting a 10% break because you're recommending people to come to their business, or you're parking your car in front of their business all the time while you go to lunch and walk someplace else, but you always give them that extra police services. They're just trying to be fair with everybody. So if it has, steps, a level of termination, if he's getting money for it, and then various degrees, in level 2, then it makes sense. It's written well.
In those scenarios, that makes sense. But the way it's written, it almost feels like if I'm a captain and I say, oh, this person does great work on studying and is a national expert on stop disparities, and we should look into that. I feel like just by saying that, I'm violating this.
No, you're
MOR.
not. No, you're absolutely not. If you're a captain and you say, listen, I've discovered someone who has a great training on blah, 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 you're doing your job. You're actually doing
Okay.
what they're calling you to do.
But that's not
You-
how
you-
this is. You know,
But this is specifically
this is
saying
not
members
how
shall not suggest, recommend, or advise, right? And it's just like,
yeah.
well, that's exactly what that person is doing, is advising and saying, hey, this is a good contract, or this is a good professional service that I think we should, solicit.
That was
So
my initial concern, that I'm on vacation. I'm talking to another cop friend in Maryland, and they say, hey, we got this kind of training and it was extraordinary. And you guys may want to look into it in Oakland. And I come back and I say to my commanding officer, hey, this company, and this is the name of it. And I looked it up on LinkedIn or whatever. And they do X, Y, and Z, and it might be helpful. That's it. And no fee is exchanged, because
I
this
think
is
that's
whether
doing your
or
job.
not a fee.
I think that would be doing your job. You should be applauded for that. So we should add maybe a clause in there, except when done in a professional manner to
Advance best practices.
to advance the success of the department.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So yeah, except for that. But okay, I just don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I now understand what you guys are saying. No cop looks at it that detailed like you lawyers are doing. But I tell you, okay, give the language, Marcia, that should be added to it.
Well, again, this is what threw me off was whether or not fee is exchanged. And I would say no fee is exchanged if I come back from vacation and say, I was talking to a cop friend of mine in Maryland, and they did this, and it sounds like it might benefit Oakland, and that's the end of it. It sounds like, for the way this is written, can't do that.
Well, again,
I can't suggest, recommend, or advise, or otherwise offer. Maybe the word counsel, because what do you mean by that? Offer counsel concerning the procurement. Of a particular product. See, again, lots of things are out there that an officer might be exposed to and want to bring back to the department to say, hey, this sounds like this is really bowling down our alley in terms of what we need.
Well, they actually want officers to do that. So we have to find the language that allows officers to do what you just described, but not get any gratuity, not get anything that benefits them, but it benefits the department. Not get anything that gives them either, it doesn't have to be just a fee. It could be food. It could be gasoline. It could be,
Well, then the word is consideration, or professional service with consideration provided, or something. Yeah, with consideration provided, because when you have whether or not a fee, and I'm just coming, no fee, just something I heard of that sounds really great.
Well, whether or not a fee is appropriate, because he didn't pay me. I recommended him to go people to go to his business, but he didn't give me any dollars. He didn't pay me. That's a fee. Yeah, but what you got was a free meal every day, and what you also got was you got your oils. You got a free oil change once a month or something like that.
Well, we have to somehow say that
there's a benefit.
Yeah, without
kind of
benefit or gratuity.
Right. Use the word gratuity, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, that's I don't know if Brian understands. I know you get what we're saying.
I'm making notes. You can't see my notes. It's on a different screen.
Yeah,
but yeah,
no,
it's goods or services fee. It's all. I'll put it. I'll add
right
that. That addresses all.
But there's got
again,
maybe in parentheses on parents that they say recommending a service for the department from some vendor this does not include recommending a service for the city or the department. And
so
I know my
it
syntax is
doesn't
not
violate city
good.
policy. Yeah.
Yeah, but
So, it's kind of a benign recommendation without consideration of a gratuity in exchange. It's
we got to put a bright line. Somehow we use words that makes a bright line between gratuity and gratuitous action versus someone
right.
recommending something because they did great research and it benefits the city or the department, or somebody told them about
right.
uh
Because that's often how you hear about stuff.
right.
Like, man,
Well,
I went to this training and it just blew my mind. It changed my whole outlook.
Yeah,
absolutely.
On cult.
Especially with leadership, command staff, executive staff, like those type of conversations we're having all the time. We're trying to manage and maximize resources. So you're not wasting resources on something that's going to be a horrible training or something that's not going to be a good investment, right? Like of course you will go through, whatever process or RFP or things
Right.
or getting different contract, quotes, things like that. You go through whatever things are required, but you also consider past experiences, and word of mouth is often the best referral.
Often. You go to NACO, you hear about all kind of stuff. And you want to come back and say, wow, we need to look into this kind of training. It sounds phenomenal. Boom, that's all I got to say about it. I mean, I haven't taken the training, but my colleague who did a report, we had a workshop on it. It just sounds like something we could really use and we could benefit from in Oakland.
Say you had parentheses and said this does not include recommendations to the city or department that may benefit the city operations or department operations, city or department operations that may enhance, benefit or enhance the city or department operations.
Yeah, because somehow the way this is written, I can't even come back from NACO and make a report about what I saw, heard, and experienced without being in trouble.
And maybe you give an example, Brian. Somebody has recommended about a training that they heard about and they recommended to the city. This is not included into this.
Yeah, for instance, remember there was a time not long ago where there was a military type training that was sweeping police departments. And it was saying, well, that's not a good benefit for what we're trying to accomplish. So something parenthetical that says enhance the objectives of constitutional policing is what we're looking for here. Mm. And we never want to discourage insights that people have received from others in the community or as a result of training opportunities, because that's the whole point of sending people to these conferences is to come back with some fresh stuff.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good.
Absolutely. And again, Brian, I think, and a quick time check, we're at 7:22, but after doing the lineups and letting and I plan to do much more and try to get to everybody at the 500 plus operational force, right? And given that, I want to be able to continue to look people in the eyes and say, I am not the boogeyman. So if you make a suggestion of a good training or something like that, I'm not going to come in here and be like, I got you. I'm violating you for a class 1 violation. You're out of here. Right. Like that's not the understanding. And so we want, the lens that we want to keep on looking at these MOR and these matrix through is saying, how do we balance out the fairness of what the original intent was, so that there's nothing nefarious or corrupt going on, but at the same time, we're not gonna slam people for just trying to do their job, and if they make a mistake here or there, or if they did something right. And so again, I'm looking at it through that lens of being able to hold that line of accountability, of transparency, and what we expect for the residents of Oakland, while also being like, I'm not trying to just get you and play I got you and try to, you know, be that boogeyman. I'm gonna keep on saying it, man. So
I'm not trying to
hopefully,
jack your career.
yeah. And but at the same time, it's hard, and I'm gonna put it this, and we're being recorded, and so I'm gonna put this out there for the recording and for the public. It's hard when policing historically has been about that, when it comes to mistakes, or when it comes to your career being in jeopardy, or when it comes to having immunity, it's been about, well, exploit whatever loopholes there are and fight it in arbitration, and fight it, right? And that's the culture change we're trying to make. Because as me running community-based organizations and running organizations, if I'm trying to instill certain levels of disciplines and standards, and every time I try to do so, my employees trying to find every loophole to be able to exploit, and to be able to wiggle their way out of discipline, at some point I'm gonna be like, well, you know what? I don't want them in my organization anymore. That's not the type of upstanding human being we want representing and serving and protecting the people. And so that's really what we're dealing with right now, right? Like we're really considering both ends of the spectrum on every one of these MOR violations, and saying, okay, is it fair? Is it written clearly? And are there loopholes that somebody could exploit on the back end if they make a mistake, rather than just saying, you know what, I made a mistake and I know I'm not going to get slammed for it, so I'll admit to it and I'll learn from it, rather than, oh my God, I'm going to get slammed for it, so let me just deny, and now everything gets held up in arbitration, and now we don't have cops on the streets anymore, and now it just wastes everybody's time. So that's what we're trying to move towards.
And I would add to that what you said, because I agree with you 100%. But I would add to that I'm not judging no police officer the same way as I'm judging a dock worker in terms of ethics and morality. I'm not doing it, and none of us should reduce police officers to that level. They're not union workers. They're not electricians. They're not whatever. They are held to a higher standard.
Highest standard.
Some cops think that, hey, I did something wrong. Treat me like you treat everybody. No. You got a gun. You got the power of life and death. You have you can write a report and send somebody to be incarcerated. No, you have to have a higher integrity, and if we don't do that, that's how we got away from the oath of office. Just obey the oath.
Yeah, be the good cop. Just follow.
Yeah, just obey your oath of office. Right. And the Constitution, please, and the Bill of Rights, please. Mm-hmm.
I think we can squeeze out one more here. Subversive organization. I know we spent a lot of time as a team coming up with a better definition than this, but this is basically no member and employee shall knowingly become a member or affiliate in any subversive organization with the specific intent to foster its unlawful objectives, except when necessary in performance of duty and with the prior authorization of the chief of police. We have a much more elaborate one, but basically if you're part of a subversive organization, then the automatic offense is termination.
Hey, Brian, could we take this up next time we meet?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
this is a big. We don't need 4 minutes on this.
Okay. Yeah, because subversive under the current political leadership in this country, when you pardon all those January 6th insurrectionists, what does subversive mean anymore?
Yeah, we did come up with this definition, if you recall. So anyway, we can come back to it. I'll go over this, but our definition that we did as a team is much better than what's currently written. So no problem.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, Marsha, I think that training you were talking about was that Dave Grossman killology training.
Yes, killology.
That killology training.
Yeah, that was
make a note of that, Ricardo. You may want to look that up because it'll be coming back your way.
Killology training. Okay.
Killology, and the guy is his name is Dave
Grossman.
Grossman. Got it. All right. Yeah, and I agree. Let's pick up the submersive that topic next meeting. I think the national climate is getting worse and worse. And we may even have to add additional language to protect what our local standards are, even in the face of national standards.
Right.
And potentially the federal government signaling, giving eye winks, or even DOJ memo saying, hey, it's okay to go offline on your calls to service. And then subsequently police departments doing so. Which is a road we have not crossed yet. Wink, wink. And so, yeah, we'll get there. But it's all in that same vein, right? I mean, Trump could go ahead and say, all right, F the NSA, Oakland, you could do whatever you want to do.
Right.
And you are 100% clear and have immunity. And we need to have protections in our ways of doing things to say, yeah, thank you, but no, thank you. We're going to hold ourselves to these standards.
See, because I was thinking of that, Ricardo, as we hear Trump saying he might drop the National Guard in Oakland. Well, the governor dropped California Highway Patrol into Oakland. And I remember writing a letter to them, basically trying to discern, are you going to follow the objectives of policing that we have established and are establishing in Oakland, or not? Do you have an MOU with the Oakland Police Department establishing the parameters of what you can and can't do in Oakland? And I'm not sure I ever got any response to that. So there's kind of already a precedent of dropping down other police force type forces in our city. Maybe Newsom didn't think far enough in advance when he did that. And they're touting, just like Trump is touting in DC, how effective you can walk now anywhere in DC and nothing will happen to you. It's just 100% safe after I sent the National Guard and the military in there.
Yeah, but they sent the National Guard from Louisiana and Mississippi, the murder capital of the world, of the United States.
Well, that's true. Newsom did send
California. Should have kept them at home. It should have kept them in my home state and kept them at home so we could stop the murders in Louisiana.
Yeah, well, they're going to have to scamper home when the hurricane season comes, and they need to go down there and clean some of that debris somewhere.
Anyway, all right, y'all. I'm gonna get a little dinner.
All right. Well, excellent meeting. Thank you, everyone. Great conversation. Always appreciate it. We'll catch you all same bad channel, same bad time in 2 weeks.
Oh, right. 2 weeks. Okay. All right. Take care.
All right. Sounds good. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Night, everyone.
Good night.